My name is Willow and I'm a chemical engineering student at the University of Alberta. I didn't always know I wanted to go into chemical engineering, but I always knew that I wanted to do something in a science field. When I was a kid, I was curious about so many things. I read books about rocks and I had a rock tumbler, and I briefly thought I'd be a geologist in the first grade. But in the second grade, I was sure I'd be a meteorologist because my favorite word was cumulonimbus. I had read it in a book about clouds and it was the longest word I knew, so it was the coolest. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I liked learning about the world, so I knew wherever I went, it would have to be somewhere in science. I was incredibly fortunate to know women in my life that were involved in STEM. My mom was an engineer, so I never fully internalized the message that STEM wasn't for girls. Not very many people explicitly say that, but I think when you're a kid trying to figure out what you're going to be when you grow up, the representation you see around you in the media plays a huge role in where you can envision yourself and what feels out of reach. I couldn't point to very many female engineers or scientists that were well known, or depictions of women in science in the movies I watched or the books I read. So being able to look at someone in real life doing these things that interested me really encouraged me that I could reach for what I wanted. That being said, I didn't know any other girls close to my age that had those interests, so I started to downplay that part of myself around other people. I think your early teenage years are the times where you feel the most pressure to fit in, and in that time I consciously stopped talking about anything nerdy because I thought that was just not what girls liked. Which of course now I look back on and I wish that I had felt like I could pursue my interests. One of the influential experiences that helped me overcome that and start to feel comfortable as a girl in STEM was a summer research program with WISEST at the University of Alberta. It's Women in Scholarship, Engineering, Science, and Technology. For the summer after grade 11, the program placed people in research labs where their gender was underrepresented. So for girls like me, it was in science and engineering, and for boys, it was in human ecology and nursing. I was in a chemistry lab, and I loved every second of the research I got to participate in. But outside of the lab, being able to meet other girls that had similar aspirations to me really affirmed that a career in STEM was not only something possible, but something that could be welcoming and inclusive. I had decided that I wanted to study chemical engineering, but within that broad field, I had no idea what that would look like for a career. Like with rocks and clouds as a kid, I felt like I had an interest in everything and therefore no idea what direction I actually wanted to move in. I once got the advice that if you want to find your passion, you actually have to go looking for it. It won't just come to you unless you put in the effort to go pursue it. So my approach throughout my undergrad was to try as many different things as I could, to get a sense of the options I had before the time came where I had to choose one. One of the most important ways I did this was by getting involved in student groups. At the beginning of my first year, I happened to talk to someone in a group called EcoCar, and so I decided to check it out. It started out as a way to build some of the technical skills that I wanted to learn in university, but it ended up a lot more than that. It became something I was truly passionate about, and I think it's really shaped a lot of my goals for the future. Transportation as we know it is a huge factor in our carbon footprint because of our reliance on gas and diesel to fuel our cars. At EcoCar, we design and build cars that are powered by a fuel cell using only hydrogen and oxygen from the air, and emit only water instead of carbon dioxide like traditional cars. It's similar to an electric vehicle, which is gaining popularity as another lower carbon transportation option. But fuel cell cars can be much longer in range, and instead of needing to recharge a battery like in most electric cars, the hydrogen tank of a fuel cell car can be refilled about as quickly as the tank of a gas car. What this has meant for me over 4.5 years on the team is it's allowed me to really learn a lot more about energy and its role in our society. Over the last few years, hydrogen and fuel cells are gaining a lot more momentum, which is fantastic. And it's also started a lot more conversations about where this hydrogen comes from. Currently, most of our hydrogen comes from processing fossil fuels, meaning that the production of this carbon-free fuel is not actually low carbon overall. However, there are low-carbon processes to produce hydrogen from renewables like solar or wind. Technologies that are still in their early stages but have the potential to fundamentally change where we get our energy from and take us huge steps along the energy transition path to a more sustainable society. There is so much exciting research being done into these technologies all around the world, and this is where I'm aiming to go for the next stage of my academic career after I graduate this year. And I can attribute much of that drive and focus that I have with this goal to the experiences that I've had leading the student team. Reflecting on the journey I've had over the past 5 years at university, that one interaction I had that introduced me to EcoCar, although I absolutely didn't know it at the time, played a huge role in shaping my entire undergrad. So many of my best memories and my most important experiences, like traveling to our competition in California or speaking at conferences and giving workshops for kids, only happened because of my involvement on the team. And most importantly, I think that I've found a direction in which I'm passionate about progressing my career. So my advice to anyone who's starting university or will be starting in a few years, regardless of what field you're interested in, and especially if you don't know what your interests are, is to take every opportunity you can to learn something new and pursue every experience that speaks to you, because it's only through looking that you'll find what you're passionate about. Those opportunities will lead to more learning and more opportunities, and before you know it, you'll be up here telling your own STEM story.